buenas tardes todos. I'm very glad and honored to be here, and both coming to these conferences, coming to the IFPUG board meeting that we had started Monday, and most important, coming to Mexico. It was the first time for me, and I came here and spent the weekend here and have had a really great time so far, and it will hopefully be that the rest of the time here for me. Many have been talking about measurement and why we are measuring, and we have different kinds of measurement methods, and it should not be a fight against these measurement methods. The fight should be against people, the IT managers and so on, that are not using facts when they're doing their decisions, because they're doing bad decisions often when they're not using facts, and that's a little bit what I'm going to talk about. Just another thing about Mexico, and I just came to think about that when Raul was having his presentation. He showed his Big Mac index. Did you see the countries that were in the top there that had a very expensive Big Macs? Sweden was one of them. And it's perhaps, that is perhaps why it's very popular to eat tacos in Sweden. It's so popular that most families are eating tacos in the Friday. So it's called Taco Friday. So if you're coming to Sweden and say Taco Friday, they know what's it all about. So most old families are eating that. So then you know you can get Mexican food if you're coming to Sweden. And who am I then? I started with measurement and function points very long time ago, and I was working at IBM, and IBM wanted to have a method to compare the different IT development sites that they had. I was working at IBM, the plant, where they were producing printers and so on. And when they were producing printers, they had to fight to get a new printer to produce at that plant, because there were other plants that could do the same. And they were comparing the plants between each other. And then they started doing that with us at the IT departments as well. And I was working on both as a developer and as a project leader there. And so I came across function points, as said here, since 1994. I think it was really 93 I started with that, so quite many years ago. And I'm certified function point specialist since 94, and I started a network in Sweden just to gather all the people that were interested in function points. And then we broadened that, and now it's more, we call it software metrics. Everything about software metrics that is of interest. So we have a group for that. And I've been an IFPUG board member since 2017, and I'm very glad that I was elected to be the vice president for the coming year here. And I've been in IFPUG for several years, been a committee member and board member. And I've also been working with the book that is called IFPUG Guide to IT and Software Measurement. I was a reviewer and co-author and wrote some of the summaries between the chapters there. And it's still valid, no matter if you're using Cosmic or if you should use NESMO or IFPUG function points or FISMA function points. There are a lot of cases there that could be relevant for all of us. So please have a look at that book if you're interested in this area. And after IBM, I continued to work at the benchmarking company. And of course, function points is the denominator that is used when you're comparing different IT sites with each other. So then I continued using function points, and even when I stopped working there, I come to a point that I was thinking I had worked too much. I should step down. But then I started working as a consultant, and yeah, and I continue working. So that is how it is. When you have a passion for something, then you continue doing that, no matter if you are paid or not. You should work with something that makes you happy every day. So then you appreciate the days. Even Bill Gates, he said, measuring progress by lines of code, that is like measuring aircraft building progress by weight. So even he realized that you need something else than you need something to measure things when you're doing IT development. And most managers nowadays, when they are doing decisions and so on, if we try to come and help them with facts, they are a little bit frustrated. And we have to convince them and teach them and show examples, real examples, cases, and everything that they can make better decisions if they start using facts. And in the bottom line, it's a lot of money for all companies that could be saved if they're using facts instead of just doing like that or just listen to a salesperson that is coming in and saying, we can outsource to that country, you can reduce the hour rate with X percent and so on, and doesn't say that what you're getting, what is the output, how much do you pay for that, and how long will it take, and what is the quality. So if you're not using metrics, you only have an opinion, and there are a lot of people that have opinions. And how was function points started then? It was in the 70s. People at IBM, especially from the marketing and so on, when they wanted to be prepared and make a marketing campaign when a new software was going to be introduced or a new release of a software, so they could market it and sell it in an efficient way. But they had the same problem as we still have with the estimation and so on. So then a group that were asked to come up with some kind of method. How should we be able to estimate with more accuracy? And Albrecht was one of the person in this group, but he was the one that got most credit for this because he was the one that made this external presentation of this function point method, 1979. So now I want to talk a little bit about IFPUG. So because most of you here, I think, you're more familiar with cosmic function points. I should tell you a little bit about IFPUG then. So we get a little bit of balance, so get more knowledge also. That's also good to have. IFPUG, it was established formally in 1987. It started 86, but as a formal non-profit organization, it was established 87. And it was celebrating 30 years last year. And the members there are different kinds of members. There are individual members, and there are companies, and there are even chapters like this kind of chapter and so on. And function point analysis was working with could we get this get this ISO credit, and there was a long process together with the other software measurement organizations. They struggled and had to work a lot to get this ISO certification, and IFPUG got it 2003. But in that, when we were talking about that ISO standardization, the IFPUG process, that method at that time, they had a kind of, there were 14 questions that you could go through and answer, and then you can get some kind of adjustment of the function points that you had counted. And that part was a mix of different things, as about environment, and as about if it was problematic in a lot of things in mathematics, and there was a lot of, it was a mix, and it was not that good. So if I started to think about, shouldn't we try to come up with a method that measures the non-functional requirements? Because the non-functional requirements started to grow in the beginnings of 2000. They came more and more, and so that's why SNAP was developed. And this, why it's called SNAP is that's a process, because when you do function point counting, that takes quite a long time if you should do it strictly and so on. To do this assessment, the non-functional assessment, SNAP, it's much faster. So one said, it's like a snap. That's why it was called SNAP. IFPUG also, they try to get out, because it's an international organization. From the beginning, they had their conferences in US every year, and twice a year often. And that's why, and that's because if you're going to be certified or being trained, you went to the conference. But they changed it, like I changed my network in Sweden to talk about software metrics. They changed the name of the conference to ISMA, and ISMA is International Software Measurement and Analysis. So it's much broader than just the function points. And function points is just a measure. You need something else around it, the use of it, and the relation. What are you using it for? Like productivity, because productivity is not the square meters of function points. It's a relation between effort and the size. And the last ISMA conference, it was down in Rome, Italy, this spring, and had about 400 attendees there, coming from many countries coming to Italy. And the next one is within 5 weeks in Brazil, October 18. And I think there are still possibility to come up and assign, and if you want to go there, and I can recommend it. Sao Paulo is a quite nice city as well, and there are other places in Brazil you can visit at the same time. IFPUG, how it works is they have a lot of committees, and the committees are working with different things. I was responsible for one committee, the International Membership Committee, because we had, as I said, a lot of international members, and we had to be in contact with them and see what they want to have and if they have questions and so on. And there are other committees like counting practices about marketing, the way how you should get out information to and create our publication that you can see that metric views. And there are also committees for each, both for the function point itself and for the snap group and so on. There are many committees there. And as I said, I was in the International Membership Committee, and we started to apply to have people in the countries where we have most members to have a representative there. Because if we have someone sitting down in India and they want to talk to the office, IFPUG office in US, it's quite a big time difference between them, and even if they're talking the same language, it could be frustrating to try to get in contact with them. And even more frustrating if we have someone from, say, France, from Brazil, or someone that is not talking English fluent enough to have a discussion with the office. Then it's easier that they talk directly to a representative. So we have representative in several countries that we have most of our members. We have in China also, Cao Yi, very nice guy. And as I said, we have a publication, Metric Views, that is published twice a year, and you can get in on the website, www.ifpug.org, and then you can find the metric views there. The last one was published in April, and it was about agile and function points. A lot of different kind of thoughts about that, how to solve that, and so please take a look at that one. And the next one is coming now in October, I think. Yeah. And I told you I was certified, and the certification of function point specialist, it started fall '93. And there is one, yeah, Jean-Marc was one of the first to get being certified. I saw that when I was back in Sweden where I live, and oh, this seems to be interesting. So at the next conference, spring '94, I went over to US to that conference, and I took that certification, and I managed to pass it, and I got my certification then. And later on, we extended this when you certify people that are working with function points. If they are not specialists and they are at least good enough to work with the function points. So we introduced what we call certified function point practitioner. And I'm going to show you a little bit later what is the difference between them to get these certifications. And then we have, of course, certification for SNAP as well, CSP. And then there is another project going on for certification. I will come back to that. A little more about function point and what is related and how it works in the world. And there have been a lot of complaining about it takes too long to count function points. So there are coming up a lot of fast counting practices and methods and so on. And now it's also organization or a group, OMG, that is trying to create automated function point counting. And it's based on the function point assessment method by IFPUG. The uses of IFPUG function point method and analysis is widely used in Italy and Brazil by the government there for close to 2 decades now. So it's well established there in those countries. And as I said, I've been working with a benchmarking company. I started, it was 20 years ago I started there, and at that time that company had been using function point, the IFPUG function point, for at least 5 years. So, and I think other benchmarking companies have been using function points as well for about 25 years at least. And now the Italian government, they're looking at SNAP, the way of sizing the non-functional requirements, to use that within the government there. And Harold told just earlier about the ICEA. That is one cooperation that we have done together with NESMA and Cosmic and Gallorath from IFPUG. Regarding Cosmic, we have done a joint work with creating a glossary for the non-functional requirements and for project requirements. And that was established 1 year ago, something like that. And then we have white papers about agile activities that we have done in cooperation with Cosmic and NESMA and released. Function points itself, do you know about this method, how it works, the IFPUG? Some I know, some of them really know, yeah. But it's not a rocket science. It's 5 different components we're talking about. We have in the green area there, it's the application area itself, the business application. We have a boundary about that because we want to know if we have data we need from other applications that we need when we're reading. If we have a banking application and let's say bank internet and we need information about the office because we should send some information to a client that he has about his statement and then also an address of the office and so on. Then you need to know about the external interface files, as we call them. And then you have the transactions, the external inputs that updates the data. You can also do something else, but mostly it's updates it's related to. And then we have the presenting transactions. It's the external inquiries, that is just bringing data and presenting them. Presenting into another application, to another system outside the company, on a screen, on a telephone, whatever. And then we have the last one, the external outputs, when you do the same kind of presenting, but you do something more than just take the data and present it. You manipulate perhaps the data, you summarize something or doing something with it. So that's the IFPUG function point assessment method very shortly. SNAP, that's the non-functional requirements, as I said, trying to get a sizing of that. And that is done by looking at 4 different categories: the data operations, the interface design, the technical environment, and the architecture. And within each, there are a couple of sub-processes, totally 16. So if we now go to the certification of these 2 measurement methods. If we look first at the function points assessment certification, where you can either be certified as a specialist or a practitioner. We have these certification in 3 languages. We have it in English, Brazilian, Portuguese, and Italian. And when you do this certification, it takes 3 hours, and you get an extra 30 minutes if you don't have English as your, or the language which you're taking as a native language. And it's 3 sections: definitions, implementation, and a case. So in this certification, you have to do the counting as well and come up with a counting result and telling exactly how this is done by the description, the requirements that you get. And to be a specialist, you need to have a 90% overall result, and at least 80% on each section. So if you have 100 on 2, you need at least 80 on the 3rd to get this certification. We heard about earlier how many that were certified in, you told us about that, Jean-Marc, in Cosmic. It seems that we have fewer here, but remember, this certification is only valid for 3 years, and it's only valid for those that are members.
For us, it's
yeah. And we have, for practitioner, that is not that as hard as being a specialist. Normally, when I was taking these the first times, I remember that we had a pass rate around 65% or something like that, 60, 65. And I think you talked about, you said it was something similar for, yeah. And for the practitioner, you need 80% overall result and 70% on each section. And this summer we had July 2018 was 142 certified. And as I said, the certification is valid for 3 years. Then you have to retake it, or an option that we have created is this certification extension program. So you can get up to 3 years extension. And there you have to send in proof within different areas, proof that you have been attending special seminars or conferences. You get points for that. And perhaps you're doing a presentation that is related to function point assessment. Then you get points for that. And so you perhaps write some white papers, and you can get points for that. And depending on how many points you get, how much you have done, then you can get 1, 2, or 3 years extension. Then we have introduced something that we call function point specialist fellows. We have about 25 now that have had 20 years of continuous certification. Although I took my first in 1984, I'm not in that group because I couldn't get my manager to get approved to fly over to US. But I have 20 years totally at least. So, okay. The SNAP then. 2 languages right now, and Italian is coming very soon. And this is a little bit not that extensive as a function points. It's 2 sections, definitions and implementations. And here you need 80% overall correct result and 70% on each section. And the certification is valid for 3 years. And the new one that I'm project leader for is benchmarking certification. And we started to think about what companies are asking were, shouldn't it be good to have a certification of benchmarking suppliers to start with? So we started a project looking at that, and we tried to get ideas from the ISO standard, ISO ISC standards 29155 about information technology for project performance benchmarking framework. And there are different parts there. They're talking about benchmarking repository, about the instruments and experience and skills. And we have added the track record. I think that could be of interest, and that the company can show that they have appropriate resources to make a benchmarking. If you as a client should have a provider doing the benchmarking, and to be sure that it's done with high accuracy and you can trust the result that is coming out. So, benchmarking, why? You have probably seen that and know that a lot of money is put in development and maintenance. Of the IT budget is often half of the money. And there has been results coming on, or studies coming from Standish Group. It's called the Chaos Report, coming yearly and showing the status of the IT projects, how they are doing. And as you see, we are not that good. Successful projects, only 1 of 3 are successful, that they are delivering in time and with what they should deliver and at the right cost, or what their agreed cost. And challenge project that something is gets some problem. It could be delayed, or it could be often that it costs more than you said from the beginning. We're missing in the estimation that Harrow is talked about a lot. We need more focus on that. Half of the projects fall in that category, and it's not that much changed since 2009. And it's the same for failed projects, those that are really falling apart and they have to close down, or they are never used, or they could be delivered but will never be used. I've seen a lot of those at big industrial companies that spending a lot of money, especially in the financial area, and they have to close down projects after spending perhaps $100 million or something like that. Wow. They could have given me some of that. instead. So, coming to the case now, the end of this presentation. As I said, I was working at a benchmarking company, and then at that company we had a big database of projects and application data as well. And I'm still doing studies for them and helping them. And then I got a call from a friend. He was working at a company, a supplier that should develop and deliver a system, include a major business process, like a mini ERP. It was not a fully ERP system, but they had a lot of different kind of functions in it. And the sales guy who sold this project to the client, he had been very, let's say, innovative, and said, we will create and deliver a system that is quality, has no faults at all. You will be so glad when you get that, and it's very, you can use it without any problems at all. And when they had been developing this, they were not coming to the end phases when we were testing and so on. They had a lot of problems, and they had to change project manager and so on, and they started to get a cold, like, I don't think we will be able to deliver this system without faults. How should we convince that that is normal, what is happening in the market? So that's why he called me. So they wanted, the purpose was to do a market comparison of relevant quality metrics then. But then I said, if you want to do that, and we're going to size this, let me come up and I can give you a little bit more. You can get, I can estimate how much time you have to spend for the maintenance and so on. So you can prepare for the resource allocation for that part of the delivery, because they were going to be responsible later on for that part as well. And I also said, I can also look at the productivity, how it has been, and tell you how the market should have done this if they had been good. So, to do that, you need the function points. I need to estimate a little bit about the faults, both see the system faults and acceptance faults, and see a little bit about the trend for that, and I wanted to estimate the productivity, and then I had to go to the benchmarking database that we had, try to find data for similar projects and applications, because I needed both the projects to compare the project itself, and I need applications to tell them about the quality, what they could see, what will accept and see when they were installing it. And so I needed reports faults per 1,000 function points. That's how we had in our database. And then we could see how it was distributed by critical, major, and small other faults. And then the productivity and so on. And then I had to do some kind of estimation of the function points, because I didn't have the time. They didn't want to spend that much money so that I should go through and count the whole application manually. So I had to do some kind of fast function point counting, and I should show you how I did it. First of all, getting the lines in code was, that is very easy. Just asking them how many, they can just take a program and run through the library and tell you how many lines of code they have. And that could perhaps give a recent result if you look at the whole portfolio. But if you look at a single project and application, you will get the variation that goes up and down. And you can see that when I used data from several suppliers and conversion tables, and it was quite big span. It was between 12 to 24,000 function points. So when I was talking to them, the IT guys, they told me that they had use case points. Oh, give me the use case point then. I can see what that will say. So I looked at some conversion factors that I could find. They were very limited at that time, and it's still limited. And there is no standardization how to count the use cases. So yeah, it doesn't say that much, but we came up with just over 4,000 function points if we had used the use cases. Then I said, why don't you show me one of your subsystems? And I didn't use the documentation because there was no relevant or accurate documentation there still. So I was sitting down with a guy, and he went through one part of the system with me. Took 1-2 hours or something like that. And then I could, because we did it quite quick, so, and he didn't know about the information behind and so on. So I had to do some kind of assuming for the data side and estimate that and estimate or assume that the transactions were of average complexity. And then I added a little bit for missing functionality because they said there should be a little bit more functionality. And then I came up with 4,900 function points doing that. And I did a report and sent it to them, and they were so interested and thought, this is a very good way. So come and count another part, because there were quite different types of applications, those different sub-processes that they had. So they gave me another one that was more in that direction versus the other one was in that direction. So I counted that one, and they told me that should be approximately 20% of the total cake. So now we had 2 pieces of cake. And when I counted that, came up with, if it all should be like this one, it should be 8,000, just over 8,000. But as I said, this is a very special one with a lot of reports and so on. So if we try to weight those two, then we will come up with a size of close to 7,000 function points. And then I use that, and first I showed about the project, and they knew that it was not that good. And if you write here, it's not the PDR counted as you're used to with the hours per function points. Here is function points per time unit instead. That's how it is in this database. So the higher it is, the better, the more productivity it is. So here we can see that they had not been that productive in this project, and they knew that they had a lot of problems, and now they got it they could really see it also. And we also look at the delivery capacity and how much could you deliver per project day. And looked at the staffing, and there was, as we have seen from others also, the more people you threw in a project, because they had problem and they wanted to try to reach the end date, then they will throw in a lot of people. And what happens when you throw in 10 extra, you don't get the same output from them, because the more people you are in a project, the more it takes, the more problem you get with the communication, and it takes longer time to understand things and so on. Often the most productive is being 4, 5, 6 persons sitting together, because they don't need any meetings. They can just throw a question over and to someone else and get an answer directly. So here they really could see this is one of the reasons why they were not that productive. And then look at the test, both the system test and the acceptances. I could at least see that they had a good trend. They had picked a lot of faults in the earlier tests. And I can also, with this data, I could prognosticate, do an estimation of how many persons do they need to have for this application to maintain it. And we had, in our database, we had, depending on how old the applications were, so we can see the new applications, you often need more time because you have errors coming in from the beginning. Then it's starting to be a mature application, need less people. And then when it's getting old, start to grow again with people, you need more and more because you have more and more spaghetti code to take care of and do changes in and so on. And here you could also see how many faults they could assume to get, and also show them the distribution that if this is a typical application, big one, you can expect to get some critical faults to show up in the first year or first 2 or 3 years. And here's also the part of the major, and then a lot of small errors and faults, you can see. So that's what I gave to them. And to do this, it was not that many hours that I had to spend to give all this kind of information for them. So they were really pleased with that. So even if you don't count in detail is more of use when you do the estimation, and then you really need to be sure what you're counting. But if you want to see the ballpark figures, then you can do fast function point counting to see are you in the right order or not, magnitude of order. That's the reason, that's what the thing that they wanted to know. So that was what I wanted to share with you. Okay. Gracias.
Agradecemos a Pierre Almen por su conferencia.
Cool.